I'm Miah Akston. I'm transgender, a voluntaryist, a small business owner, and a veteran. It only gets weirder from there. This is the Uncontrollables. I'm Miah Akston, and this week with me, I have Josh Featherstone,
Hello.
who is the vice chair of the Libertarian Party of Marion County, author on a blog that's been lost and forgotten a long time ago. I also have Jeffrey Cox, who is an attorney, author, and historian.
What's shaking, y'all?
And what you're attorney, author, and historian. Are you like a law author, historian?
No, I'm a military historian, and I write military history articles and books, focusing mostly on World War II and ancient Greece and ancient Rome. In fact, we've got a book coming out next year called Rising Sun, Falling Skies, a disastrous Java Sea of campaign of World War II, coming out in March 2014.
Yeah, I'm not going to read that. So,
thank you for that endorsement. I really appreciate that.
What this show is about is basically a lot of the personalities around Indiana, and I'll be pointing people from all places around the country, but mainly Indiana, and how insane we all are here. We're not just flyover country. We're, Arkham Asylum on crack. So,
but a lot of it's a good kind of insane.
Yeah, because crack can be good sometimes, too. So I'm not endorsing crack. We're going to kind of get into a lot of different political subjects, some just the recent topics that are out there, and just things that can possibly be offensive and make them more offensive. Probably. So be prepared to be offended, but keep listening, and then share it with all your friends.
Sacred cows make the best burgers.
Oh, yes, they do. This is on the Indiana Talks Network. It is a nifty little thing. It's the first live and recorded show network in Indiana. It's all broadcast online at the Indiana Talks website, which is indianatalks.com. It's a nifty little website, and thank you, Gary Snyder, for reaching your hand out to the most insane person you'll ever meet to give them a show.
I can debate that statement.
They have some great shows like Civil Discourse Now, which is some other attorneys deciding to have a show.
Mark Small and Paul Ogden run Civil Discourse Now, and they do a grert job of it.
Yeah, they have too many socialists and fascists, you being one of them. There's also
fascists are the best dressed.
We'll debate that. There's also the Gary Snyder Show, TJ Thompson, a bunch of sports shows, and I don't care about sports, so
Johnny Stir on Monday nights, the Democrats' point of view.
And probably the least popular show and the least likely you guys would ever want to listen to is the Weird Libertarians podcast. It's a bunch of little college punks and some guy that has been trying to, get his own radio show for years, and it's just an absolute abject failure. Chris Spangle, thank you, by the way, for helping me set up all this equipment in my
You can
house.
hear him being live in the studio audience tonight.
And that check has not cleared yet, so you want to keep going with that.
That was maybe the most accurate description of me ever.
Let's get a plug in for a friend of mine named Amy Gregory. She's got her own show on the Indiana Talks Network. She's a woman Republican, and she's got a lot of spunk to her, and she's a lot of fun to talk to, a lot of fun to listen to.
What's her show?
I don't know, actually.
Wonderful. It sounds wonderful. I'll be tuning in.
I just saw her plug it the other night, and it didn't give me a title on it. And so I was like, okay, I want to give her a hand here. But since you asked that question and sort of sucked all the endorsement out of it, thank you very much.
So you just kind of really became the worst friend ever.
Well, to anyone who is still listening.
Okay, so we're going to cover a different little range of topics tonight. There's been, at the time of this recording, which is like a couple days prior to the actual airing of it, a lot of stuff's happened. So we're going to not touch so much on that because it'll be a week old by the time you listen to this. We'll cover topics that are still relatively new but insane. Insanely popular. So, like, the first one we're going to cover is of the very young transgender girl out in Colorado.
Yes.
Her name's Coy.
Coy Mathis.
And just the cutest little girl ever. I know I already offended people by calling her a little girl. Josh, you brought this topic up as one that you wanted to talk about tonight. Why did you want to talk about this subject in particular?
Well, a couple different issues. First off, because, we have a transgender host, and so it might be a little close to home. Talk about some things that maybe you can provide a point of view on that a lot of the listeners may not fully understand. Also want to talk about it beyond what happened to this girl where she wasn't allowed to use the girls' restroom in her school anymore. Talk about what exactly is gender identity, and at what age are you making a responsible decision, allowing a child to make gender identity calls? Was Coy, let's say, for example, is she aware of what the possible repercussions of her decision are at 6 years old? Colorado, I think that this school is pretty obviously in violation of the laws of the state of Colorado. Miah, you pulled up a document showing some of the laws involving transgender persons in the state of Colorado, and one of the laws specifically stated that you can't discriminate in the case of restrooms for transgender people. So in this case, I don't know. You talk about intent of the law versus the letter of the law. The letter of the law definitely says that this was discrimination. Intent of the law, I would be willing to venture that no one was probably thinking about a 6-year-old when they wrote the law, but that doesn't mean that the law shouldn't be applying here. And the schools definitely crossed the line and in doing this. Now, the opposite side is what do we have as far as parents and other children in the school? It does bring topics to light that can be sexual in nature. And a lot of parents, whether or not it's the transgender side of the issue, may not be comfortable handling the sexual side of the issue and mommy and daddy parts with their 6-year-olds that are also going to the bathroom that are females and going. So where exactly does a 6-year-old fit into the world of the transgender community, and were these decisions the right decisions by the school, by the parents, by other people involved?
Well, to start off, we're talking about a government facility, and that's one of the main sticking points we need to keep, in mind of, is that this is a government facility that's taking state money, if not federal money. How many schools aren't funded with federal money? So the guidelines we apply to public school systems are stringent, the same as we apply them to all government functions. So that's kind of where something just needs to be stuck in there, as at the forefront of this. But how we treat gender in this country is absolutely absurd. Why is it important what gender a child is at all, one way or the other? And we even teach them from a young age with the bathrooms that you are different from the other people over there, and you need special bathrooms. And so we start right there, the separation of the they say this the sexes, but genders and gender roles. And how you're supposed to dress, act, talk, mate, everything. So there's a lot of questions you kind of brought up there, and they're all pretty easy to address for the most part. But with a little girl that's 6 years old, if she wants to present her persona in a feminine form from what she knows of it, there's no reason not to oblige her.
Well, there's a follow-up question possibly, too. Is she, as a 6-year-old, identifying her own gender, or has there been leadership from her parents guiding her down a path based on things that perhaps they saw or believed about her?
Well, according to the official story from the parents, it seems as though they basically started noticing things from a very, I want to say, 18 months,
It was young. It was young. She was playing with dolls instead of soldiers or whatever the case may be, was interested in carrying a purse.
And then, so there's the issue of, does the toy make the child's gender? Maybe she was playing with dolls and all that, but she, as she got a little bit older, she also started saying she wanted to do this, do that, wear dresses. She didn't want to wear boys' clothes. She didn't want to do the boys' things. And she said that stuff. And you can't really apply the whole thing to just a broad range of children, because as we know, all people's children are different. Some people develop a little bit later. Some people have a very strong identity and persona at a very early age. And so you got to kind of take that into consideration, that maybe this case shouldn't be looked at a broad basis on all points, but from kind of a myopic, basis.
Well, I think there are 2 points, and you've touched on both of them that are really worth examination here. The first one is from a medical and practical standpoint. The other one is philosophical. From a medical standpoint, we don't know what causes, I believe it's called gender dysphoria.
That's what it's being titled now in the DSM-5.
Yeah, we don't know what causes it. We don't know precisely what its symptoms are. It's sort of like...
Hold on real quick.
Okay.
Not what causes it.
Right.
Necessarily, that's kind of a weird way to go about it. But how to put that right? Because cause sounds like it's something you can catch and or cure, or it's an affliction.
And it's not. It's sort of, at least my understanding.
Let's say why it happens.
Yeah.
Because some people, for me, for instance, I knew from a very young age that I had issues. I still have lots of issues. There are a myriad of issues, as you guys may find out when you keep listening. But it's you can be born with gender dysphoria.
Oh yeah, and I'm not debating that. But what I'm saying is, like, from a physical standpoint, to get the treatments, to go to a full transsexual, to go through the surgery and the hormone treatments, the earlier you start those treatments, the better off you will be from a medical and a physical standpoint, and the more easily you will be able to reintegrate in society. And so when they're talking about, this little girl is 6 years old, and, is she young enough to be making that decision? From the other standpoint, this is the best time to make that decision because the consequences down the road will be far less.
What I want to, you bring up consequences, and I think that's
right.
What I think is the most important thing about this story. It's more important than the bathrooms. It's more important than anything. Is this girl at 6 years old? You, Miah, you're very well aware that there are consequences as far as society, whether or not there should be. And I agree that there shouldn't. There are. And at 6 years old, it's right at that time what feels right for her. But at a time where she is more aware of consequences and weighing benefits, pros versus cons. She's at 6 years old making what is a lifelong decision.
No, and actually she's not. Now, how she's dealing with this is just a social implication as far as the school system's concerned in her school life. That's the only choice she's making at this point. It's up to the parents if they push or prod, or stay neutral or negative. She's not actually making decisions because 99.9% of all doctors in this particular country will not start children on any kind of hormone blockers, puberty blockers, or hormones until they're at least 12 years old or so. It's not necessarily a long-lasting decision. It only has social subjective implications at this point.
Well, here's the second point I was going to make, and it's more philosophical. And there is a gender disparity here that is not acknowledged throughout most of the world. And it basically comes down to just this analogy. It's okay if women wear pants, but it's not okay if men wear skirts. That's just the basic analogy here, and I don't agree with it. But the thing is, women are celebrated when they do guy things, what are called guy things. But when men do girl things or women things, they are ridiculed. There is a lot of pressure on men and boys to act masculine. When they do not, they are ridiculed. Now, what we may have here, and I have not studied this case, I've not studied the medical history of it, but there are probably a lot of cases where little boys want to wear what are today called girls' clothes, skirts, which used to be men's clothes in ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and in the Renaissance and medieval periods they were. Tights, same thing. But those are only considered to be girls' clothes today. If they want to do that, they are somehow ridiculed and something is wrong with, they feel that something is wrong with them. And so they're made to feel that, oh, well, I like to do girl things, therefore I must want to be a girl. But does that mean that every woman who wears pants wants to be a guy? Not necessarily. And I think we need to examine what some of the assumptions are in that. And I think it's unhealthy to say, well, you're a guy, you can't wear skirts, you can't wear tights, it's just wrong, it's immoral, as some people might call it, and you might end up avoiding some of these situations if you just let people feel free to be who they want to be.
There's two distinctions, and they kind of be made in that whole little plethora of what you just spit out, is that you've got kind of made the point that if women do something more kind of masculine, that it's celebrated. Not the case with trans men. Trans men, that's for anybody that doesn't know how I'm using that phrase, it is people born and assigned the female gender at birth who are transitioning to be a man. And so those people that take it that far are ridiculed just as much from their side of the peer group. And it's kind of a societal thing where we don't really pick up on that and report that. We report the little boys that want to be little girls because, oh my God, masculinity and men are under attack in this country by the evil leftist liberals and blah, 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 blah. Now, and then you keep talking about clothes. I mean, this goes as far as to how someone identifies themselves with their actions and everything as being a soft-natured person. And that's attacked and beat out of boys in this country, that if they want to be soft, even if they just want to be intellectual, for some parts of the country, the ones south of the Mason-Dixon line, you get beat if you want to be intellectual. You get beat if you want to be any sort of femininity. So it's a big deal, and it had a lot of implications on children. I mean, if these kids aren't being allowed to experiment, and that's what a lot of kids do. A lot of boys, they want to wear their mom's heels or they want to wear dresses and skirts. That does not necessarily mean they're transgender. They're experimenting
far more than is generally known. In
right.
fact.
Well, I mean, but difference between that, which is a common occurrence, and it happens to everybody. Everyone has curiosity. I mean, everyone's had a gay thought, a transgender thought go through their head at some point.
Let's not go that far, but
most everybody has.
Yeah.
And even if they don't admit it, it's a subconscious curiosity unless they're brain dead. But with this particular little girl, Coy, she is, and I'm going to keep referring to her as she. So that's going to piss people off, but I don't care. So she actually wants to be identified as a girl. It's not her just wanting to wear girls' clothes and still be a little boy. She's actually identifying herself at the behest of her, at her own free will. I mean, her parents have taken her to counseling to, go through that. And most therapists and counselors on that point know better not to push a child one way because they are children and they are,
Well, but how? Number one, how do you make the distinction at that age? I mean, the primary distinction is what you're going to see, and what you're going to see is girls in skirts and dresses and men in pants. Now, I mean, to proceed along, just further along those lines, I think the pressure on men and boys to act masculine is far worse than the pressure on women to act feminine, because I don't know any women who have had their sexuality questioned or been called pedophiles or potential rapists or whatnot because they wore pants.
Well, not in the current generation, but just not too long ago, our grandparents' generation, that would have been quite the opposite of a case. This is something that came about, with women actually becoming more prevalent in the workplace post-World War II. During World War II is kind of when that change began. Prior to that, the jeans idea of a woman was frowned upon. Even my parents talk about when they were young in school, girls just didn't wear jeans to school. But today, that's just commonplace. So it's really not that far into our history we have to delve to find the same thing on the opposite side of the aisle.
And I'm not going to disagree with that one bit, but I think it should be illustrative that maybe today we should look at men wearing skirts and men wearing tights or heels. Because in history, men have worn all those things. They've worn skirts.
You look at the founding fathers. The constitutional side, and there was more lace in that room than you can find in the Victoria's Secret today.
And if you look at, just watch Pirates of the Caribbean, Captain Barbossa, the baddest of the bad guys in Pirates of the Caribbean, all the lace and feathers that he wore.
Yeah, and so style changes, but it's funny that we as a society and a human race never seem to stop buying into this whole societal norm crap that is permeating every last instance of how we act, and we just continue it. It changes constantly and is constantly changing.
Well, and it could be that we're on the cusp of seeing a major change in those attitudes in our lifetimes for sure, if not in the next decade or whatever. I can remember around the turn of the millennium having conversations about, gay rights was going to be the next big civil rights movement, but we weren't sure if that was going to happen in our lifetime, but you could tell it was going to happen. And now here we are in 2013, and we're already a half dozen years into that battle, and attitudes changing drastically.
Right.
So it could be that within another half dozen years that this conversation that we're having
I think this one's going to
seem
take
obsolete
a lot longer, because this is breaking down society, going against the notion that traditions are good things, that this is the way it's always been, this is how human beings work, this and that, sexuality bit and homosexual and all that stuff. That's a little bit easier to swallow because you can still buy into gender stereotypes and everything else. This is breaking down the entire one of the main fabrics of society, where you are assigned a gender at birth, and then from birth on you are forced in this little corner of either being masculine or feminine. Now, you can jump out of it in certain points, but not too far before you're completely destroyed in society. So I don't know if this one's going to be an easy one, especially for like this, younger people, and there's more therapists and more medical professionals coming out there. The DSM-5's just changed to call it gender dysphoria instead of gender identity disorder. So it's not a disorder anymore. We're not medically,
And I think the DSM is under a lot of criticism itself, because one of the things is that they've sort of folded Asperger's back into the autism deal.
Well, I'm just going to say is that the DSM is an absolute piece of crap garbage.
Which is what a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists have told me.
It's the whole standardized thing. And the human mind and social interactions can't be standardized. It's kind of silly. It's like trying to think of economics in a way that you can plan every little thing out.
Well, I can understand an attempt at trying. I mean, they're trying to help people. They're not trying to hurt them. And I can understand the effort at trying, but I don't know that in this case it was accurate. But one thing to point out in terms of changing attitudes, I have noticed over the last 10 years, a tremendous increase in the number of websites and the number of articles that are advocating men being allowed to wear skirts, allowed to wear hose, allowed to wear heels. We then have something anymore called meggings, which are basically men in leggings. And I've seen them, which I don't agree with the term, since men wore leggings in ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and the Renaissance and everything. But we've actually seen them on TV ads now. And so I think that it's starting to seep in, at least into the younger generations, that this is an unfair constraint, that it's an illogical constraint, that there's nothing immoral or even sexual about adopting.
I even have a problem with all of that, because all it's doing is making an appearance of clothing or choices socially acceptable. I'm wanting to push to completely abolish the idea of social acceptance. I mean, I honestly want to abolish society as a whole. I mean, the social fabric, we have to have this approval and everything else. I am a voluntarist, which means I only want voluntary social interaction. So from a business standpoint, if I don't like you as a person, I don't really want to factor that into my business proposals, because I want your business, I want your money, your product, whatever. But then again, if I don't like you, I don't have to associate with you. So I don't want to force society to accept anybody.
Small steps.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The point is, you have a great vision there. It's a wonderful vision, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen in the 1950s. It wasn't going to happen in the 1800s to let women vote, to let there not be slavery. You had to step outside of that. And even when we got rid of slavery, we still had what was, for all intents and purposes, still slavery. Today we have women in the workforce, which we wouldn't have seen 60, 70 years ago, especially to the degree we have now. We have growing acceptance of the LGBT community today. Tomorrow, maybe we'll see guys more accepted wearing skirts if they want to. But it's going to be a day beyond that before we can get rid of the idea of looking at somebody with gender altogether. It's not possible, and it's a wonderful thought to want that to be where society goes. But I don't think there's any way you can just assume that it would be easy to just snap your fingers and have us there.
You're not going to get people just ignoring gender completely, for the simple reason that the vast majority of men will always be attracted to women and vice versa.
That's sexuality. I'm talking about gender identity and gender roles. That is sexuality. That has nothing to do with gender identity and gender roles.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
We'll go back to the main point of this little girl Coy. Should a child be allowed to make these decisions? And why is it any matter to the school? I mean, a lot of people bring up the point, well, what about when she gets older? When her body starts developing a certain way or not, or, this or that. Should she still be allowed to use the bathroom? And everyone's worried about there being a penis in a girl's bathroom. Well, who's going to know? I mean, are we going to start having TSA-like checkpoints at schools now to lift up girls' skirts and check the little boys' pants to make sure they're going in the right bathrooms? I mean, how are you going to establish that?
Let's play the devil's advocate for just a second. Let's say you allow her to stay in the women's room because she identifies herself as transgender. And so at the high school level now, you have some jock kid that is obviously not transgender that decides to throw a dress on for a week so he can get in the women's room.
Well, that's a pretty good strawman argument. Okay, so you were saying, the kid getting older in school and somebody just being able to throw on a dress. Well, if the kid's got to come out and identify, as transgender, that actually wants to come out and make say, I'm going to start identifying as female. It wouldn't really be that easy for just any kid to throw on a dress. I mean, the schools are going to have, the people aren't going to just allow, that kid's wearing a dress, they ought to, go into the girls' bathroom.
My point is that eventually you have to, as much as you want to distance yourself from rules and regulations regarding this, eventually you're going to have some kind of regulation to some sort in place, or people are going to find loopholes to take advantage of this in a negative way. And that's
going to bring lawsuits.
Right. And when you're talking about parents especially,
stupid lawyers,
they're going to be extremely sensitive about the possibility of a guy getting into the women's room just for the sake of seeing some hoo-haws and na-nas.
Okay, how is he going to do that? Because, are girls walking around naked in the girls' bathroom?
If you're going to the bathroom... All right, so what about the showers now? Do you go to the women's restroom, but you use the men's showers?
when are we going to stop being so, oh my gosh, somebody saw me naked? Or, if you're comfortable enough showering with a bunch of other people in a bathroom that are judgmental pricks anyways, because no high school kid isn't.
Well,
and so girls get harassed for having small boobs, or maybe some of their lady parts are weird looking or whatever.
They make lady parts that aren't weird looking.
And the same thing with guys in the guys' bathroom.
A lot of us are not comfortable showering with other people. It's just something we're forced into doing by the school.
So there's another good point.
Yeah,
should you force kids to do that? What?
No, you
but
shouldn't.
then okay, and
They
then
don't
also
do it
need to
in
make the
Europe.
distinction that there's stalls in bathrooms. So honestly, until you make a deal out of trans kids, who the hell is ever going to know that you have something maybe slightly different down below than anyone else? That's the thing. How are you supposed to know? If a kid decides to change halfway through a school year or something else like that, it's a government institution. They cannot discriminate. If the parents of certain kids don't want their kids around a hoo-ha in the bathroom, well, you know what? Private school or homeschool. You can't force the government to segregate based on your bigoted ignorance.
I do have a partial solution to this. Eliminate gym class. Very easy. Stupid class. You don't get anything out of it.
I
It's
say
worthless.
abolish public schools in the first place, but,
Right.
because that's just an absurd notion that the state can educate children better than we can.
Oh, but they do such a wonderful job.
I know. I mean, we're like smarter than we ever had. No, wait, no, we're not.
But we lead the world in technology and innovation. Oh, wait.
No, we don't.
No.
We have so many jobs. It's not even. No, oh no, we don't.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that we're sitting here dealing with this issue that we shouldn't have to be dealing with. I mean, for the love of all that's holy, they've made laws that say you cannot discriminate people against their gender identity or their perception thereof. I mean, the whole perception thing has been coming into play, that you can't discriminate against somebody for thinking they're gay or that they're trans.
They make those laws, but those laws are violated all the time. They just find ways around it. Employers fire people for being gay all the time. They just don't say it's reason for being fired. It's because he's gay. No, they don't do that.
No. Private employers and private business owners can do whatever they want. I don't care if an employer wants to hire only black people and then not do business with any black people. I mean, if they want to be insane and go that route,
I'm not so sure I'd go that far.
Because I don't want to force a Jewish employer to hire a neo-Nazi and not be allowed to fire him. Well, if I was a Jewish employer and I wanted to sit there and hire somebody, I'm like, yeah, I really like this person. I find out later they're a neo-Nazi going to Klan meetings every night. I really don't want to keep them in my employ.
But discriminating against a neo-Nazi is not illegal. Discriminating against a black person is.
Well, okay, let's go this route with religion and race. I'm a Jewish person. I don't want to hire like an imam for a Muslim that preaches every night at his mosque that we should kill the Zionist scum. Should I have to keep him in my employ?
I think there's a major difference between what you're arguing and the reasons those laws were put into place.
Well, no, the laws are wrong when it deals with private business owners, because you have the right to decide how to run your business, who to employ, who not to employ.
So it was okay for those cafes. It was okay for those cafes to keep blacks out in the South during the Jim Crow era?
Well, a lot of those laws were kind of endorsed by the state, but honestly, yes. Well, if you want to be an idiot and deny customers from using your business, fine, go ahead. I hope you go out of business. If you don't, you live amongst a bunch of idiots.
When in today's society, where you're talking about if you did that today, you would go out of business, is one thing. But when you're trying to talk about approaching change, back then they wouldn't have gone out for business for that. Back then they might have gotten more business for that.
Yeah,
if you're trying to embrace change, then maybe you've got to.
But that's the discussion, is that you have to have people have to go through hardships that catch attention for anything to happen. That's, I think, what these parents are doing here, is making such a big deal out of it. But it's with the public school system. But it's coming to the point where a local news station, RTV6, shared this story with the picture of the little girl. There was about 800 comments when I got on there of mainly people with too much time on their hands raising 3 kids, absolutely going insane about this, saying that they need, that's a little boy, you're not allowed to be a little girl, things like that. And what I noticed is that those people were the loudest voice. There was very little opposition to them saying all of these,
that's part of
ignorant things.
That's part of the change of the world. They're going to be the loudest voice for a while.
How to make the change. You don't want to have to worry about being the loudest. Who's the loudest, who's not the loudest wins. It's just, why is no one else speaking up? They know it's ignorant. They might not even agree with transgender issues and things like that, but just nobody speaks up about anything. Nobody says anything. That's how you do things, not through laws and forcing people.
I completely disagree that no one's speaking up about this, though. You're seeing more and more people speak up about it every single day. It's just not the forefront issue yet.
No, it's not.
Look at Pride, Circle City and Pride downtown. Every year right now, it's bigger and bigger and bigger, and has a larger and larger audience. And more of the people there are not a direct member of the LGBT community. They're there as supporters. That's speaking up.
They're there to solicit business too.
But there's also a problem with that. A lot of that whole community, I have a whole issue with the LGBTQ community in the first place because they look to the government to save them. Hold on.
Okay.
Why that's an issue is that they're not looking to help themselves and save society. They're looking to fight for the government to come and save them. So I think it's a moot point in the first place, because as long as the government keeps making, protected classes, I'm not fighting to change society. I'm fighting to have the government change society for me. And that's why it takes so long to get all this crap done.
Let's go back to the case of the blacks not being allowed to sit at the lunch counter in the South. You don't think the government should have gotten involved. Is that correct?
Well, if they wouldn't have got involved in the first place, none of that would have happened.
No.
The Jim Crow laws and everything else, it was a sponsored bit of the government. I mean, blacks were more free before the 1900s for a period before they were after. A lot of the segregation laws were being reinstated into the military and everywhere else. It was a government that pushed society to change.
That was with public support, though. Those were laws that were passed. But
No, it was with the loudest voices in the public doing that, and everyone allowed it to happen. I mean, we can say the same thing about anything else. You can get, 1913, the Federal Reserve Act, and, on the 16th Amendment and all that crap is that people weren't speaking up.
Again, it was the popular thing to do in the South to not let black have the same rights as whether it's to sit at the lunch counter or to go to a drinking fountain.
But what should they have done? Either fight the government or just say, you know what, I will no longer go to your business. I'm going to start my own. Now, that's a horrible place to be put, but like what I'm doing here...
It is a horrible place to be put. I don't think it's fair to ask people that, you don't like it, start your own business.
That's the problem with quote-unquote protected classes, though. The problem isn't protecting people by saying, hey, let's make sure that you have the same abilities and rights as everyone else. That's not the problem with protected classes. The problem is overprotecting them by saying, actually, you have more rights or more benefits or more access to things than the other people do. That's the problem with protected classes.
And forcing other people to accept them. I don't want to force anybody to accept me, but what I'm doing here is I'm going around and finding local businesses in Indiana that are LGBTQ friendly and specifically trans friendly, and going to them and promoting their business, but not admonishing anybody else necessarily, not yet.
But if there weren't a number of those protection laws and those anti-discrimination laws, a lot of those businesses would not exist. And if they did exist, they would not be catering to the LGBT community.
Well, those businesses are doing that on their own. You've got,
Really?
The businesses downtown. You've got Talbot Street, and you've got a bunch of other places around town.
Talbot Street's more eclectic, but yeah, it's very, very welcoming.
But you've got all these places that's on their own voluntarily associated.
Is it English Ivy? Is that the one you're thinking of?
Yeah, English Ivy. You've got a couple others. You got Zoning's Call, which is a bar. You've got all these different places that specifically cater to the different communities. And they did that on their own. No law had anything to do with that.
I'm not so sure I would agree with that. Because
do you think those business owners said, because of this law, I'm going to cater to these people?
I'm thinking that they may have felt empowered because there were laws that were coming into place that were helping protect the LGBT community, and so they figured they weren't going to be boycotted out of existence.
So you're saying that society can't change without government force?
I'm saying there are instances where it cannot.
I think that society can absolutely change without the force of government. Sometimes, though, you just need a little push.
Back to the topic, because we keep getting way off track.
God knows that I don't think
I can't control you
other
people.
Than maybe you.
Wait,
I don't think
we're
that's a huge government fan here.
But
we can't control the clock. We found our limitations.
This little girl Coy is being homeschooled and has been since December, which I think she ought to just stay at home and be homeschooled.
She's going to get a better education. She's going to be treated better.
Oh, what are you talking about? I mean, she's not going to learn to sell drugs. She's not going to get, free birth control, or she's not going to get condoms to give to any of her lovers. She's not going to be taught the U.S. started World War II and that it was responsible for the Japanese attacking Pearl Harbor and that we're evil. She's not going to be taught whole math. She's not going to be taught any of that stuff. So, I mean, what are you talking about?
Well, here's what I hope to see out of this story. It's nothing that I really want to see over the next few weeks or even few months or even few years. I hope somebody follows up on this story. I want to see where Coy is in middle school. I want to see where Coy is in high school. I want to see where Coy is in college, and see this is a unique case as far as at least media exposure to see someone this young and gender identification going on. So I would love to know, where does this girl end up?
It's by no means the first. I have seen multiple other cases like this, but a number from across the border.
Yeah,
it's got first that has media coverage in Indiana. There have been some in other states and some across Canada.
But I mean, as far as national news,
national network. I mean, Fox News is talking about a transgender girl.
I didn't know those people could say the word transgender on Fox News without exploding into fire and brimstone.
I think they said a gay little boy in a dress was their exact words.
They don't know what gay people are or what men or women are because they used a photo of lesbians to promote different.
I mean, that is same-sex marriage, but I think each of these cases is different.
Oh no,
I don't think they should all be painted with the brush that this case would paint.
No, because like we said earlier, is that the whole gender identity and transgender thing, because I'm going to spout off some terms here. You've got transgender, genderqueer, gender identity, you've got bigender, trigender, you've got gender fluid, you've got transsexual, transvestite, crossdresser,
and you've
also got a million different things.
You've also got comitatense, which were the emperor's legionaries in the late Roman Empire. That's just for the general education of our audience.
Yeah, well, thank you. But so we got all these different terms and all these different things. It's a huge community, and for them to just be blatantly saying that this little girl's going to want to, transition into be a woman and surgeries is just crap. Man, I hate not being able to cuss. It's crap.
But aren't you interested to see what happens with her down the road?
Oh, no. Yes, 100% definitely. But like addressing Jeffrey's point is that they're kind of painting it with a broad brush. I see someone doing this that early, depending on how their feelings really are and how they actually feel about their identity. Me specifically, I will not identify as a transsexual because I am not going to quote unquote go all the way. I don't broad brush everybody thinking that they have to get a million surgeries and to be, medically fit for whatever. But so it's been broad brush, but it will be interesting to follow and see how she's treated for her foreseeable future after all this popularity.
And I want to make clear that we wish her and her family well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, anyone going through this is in for a tough time at that age, and we hope that everything, regardless of what choices they make in the future, works out the best for this family and for their daughter.
Oh, definitely. So we've beat that subject to death.
Here
Absolutely.
on Indiana Talks.
Yeah, on Indiana Talks. Hey, how you guys doing?
Talks. This is a network founded by Gary Snyder to bring local talk to the web across Indiana.
And it's got sports, too.
It's
whatever
got
those
sports.
are.
It's got all sorts of politics and talk. And I'll tell you what.
It has sports politics.
It does. And it's a great new asset for the people here in the state to be able to get some unique points of view that they definitely can't find on some of those other commercial radio stations out there. Indiana Talks is really awesome. I'm glad we have it.
Yeah,
and they can always use your contributions to buy new equipment to keep the system running and to be able to produce these fine talk shows across the web for people in Indiana to get the local coverage that they have been denied so long by many of the so-called media outlets, especially in Indianapolis and especially the major print media outlets in Indianapolis.
Yeah, because we love Jim Shella. No, we don't. Please get off the air, Jim Shella. So
and this has no relation to the fact that my father is Norman Cox.
Yeah, no.
Who is the greatest reporter who ever lived.
I will disagree with that because I think no reporters are good. But so we're going to kind of touch on another subject here because we kind of covered a couple different ones with that first issue. I am also I guess I want to say member, but I'm a volunteer with the Indianapolis Cop Block group, which is kind of part of the Cop Block group nationally. If you don't know what Cop Block is, it's a decentralized organization of people pushing for police accountability where we record the police and we educate the public on how to deal with the police. Now, we've just started going out into the foray and filming the police locally here on weekends, seeing what they do with their paintball guns, shooting people with them for what I think is absolutely no reason. Paintball guns with the pepper spray little balls in them, and just basically treating people like cattle downtown. I don't know if you've ever been downtown at the Saturday, Friday, Sunday night, but that's what they do. They treat you like cattle, and they just sit there and stare at you, and they run their cars all night, letting us pay for their gas.
So you're saying that they take people and slaughter them and then cut them into pieces and then serve them to fine restaurants and grocery stores throughout the country?
I'd eat some of that, but no. They're treating they corral them around like cattle. I didn't, not necessarily all the way around.
Doing this now? How many
I've
seen
gone
a
out,
couple shots, a couple different weekends.
Yeah, I've gone out, I think, 4 times now. It's really cold out. We can only go out for so long without freezing to death. But we're looking at
if
getting...
you watch your football in a dome, maybe. If you sit out for hours and hours and watch football in temperatures in the teens, it's not real cold.
So we've been going out.
The Ohio State University speaking loud and clear, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely, and a fan of the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers and the San Diego Chargers.
What have you seen? I'd love to hear what you've seen.
We haven't... Actually, I haven't got anything on film, that's super great yet. And we don't have a horrible police department here in Indiana, the IMPD. You can either agree or disagree with that. I'm just going to say it's not horrible. I mean, it's not the LAPD or the NYPD. So we're pretty blessed.
Or Chicago or
any of the big cities.
Right,
the absolute militarized police state. I'm going to burn your cabin down.
I like New York's
you.
police department. LA's has got
to stop and frisk everybody, especially the black people, those evil, evil black people. But with here, we want to stop it from ever getting anywhere. And we've heard reports from people. We've heard stories about things. And we just go down there and we're watching, we're talking to all the vendors and some of the, the different people are down there all the time. And they tell some pretty wicked stories that I'm not going to say because it's all hearsay and I don't want to actually do anything.
And because we only say stuff on this show that can be admissible in a court of law. It cannot be hearsay.
Well, here's my thoughts on IMPD and the kind of things that you're looking for. In this with the police department the way it is here in Indianapolis, I wonder how much you're actually going to find downtown. Is that your best place? The things that you hear the war stories about from Indianapolis isn't downtown. It's in small urban apartment complexes at 3 a.m. when there's a weird call, and it's not the kind of place that Cop Block is just going to be.
Well, that's the thing. It's a twofold thing. We have to first off build up a name and show a presence. We have to empower people with what their rights are, that they need to get dash cams, and they need to have recording systems on their phones that upload digitally so they don't have, the cops can't steal their phones, and that they record all police interactions all day, every day.
Yeah, well, and I'm not going to disagree with that. I think the cops, they do not have a protection against being recorded. They should be recorded to make sure they're doing their jobs. It's one way to hold them accountable. But I would be careful about saying, well, the worst stories I've heard have been at urban apartment complexes at 3 a.m. instead of downtown. Number one, the city administration in Indianapolis basically cares only about downtown. Basically
absolutely.
About the mile square. The rest of this county could burn for all they care in the city county building. They do not care one whit. They only care about downtown and how it looks to the visitors. But number two, some of the worst areas in the city are in those apartment complexes at 3 a.m. I do know that at 42nd and Post, which was built with way too many apartment complexes because of idiot zoning allowances. There are several complexes there that the IMPD will not go into without backup. They will not respond to a call without backup. And that's not the fault of IMPD. That's the fault of, first, the people who allow those complexes to be built, so many of them in one area. But it's also the people around there who...
But it doesn't even go to a situation that big. It's a simple traffic stop. When you have cops treating people like everyone's guilty until they decide they want to beat the innocence out of you, I mean, you get cops that are coming up and they treat everyone like criminals. They pull their guns on everybody nowadays. And, it's not as big here, but it is like the police chief just promoted 2 people that had been demoted for the improper handling of a case where a cop should have gone to jail for a very long time for being drunk driving his car, but because of some stipulation.
What case are you talking about? The Bassard case?
But the Bassard case.
Okay.
Yeah, the demotions are now...
The demotions, first off, the 2 guys that got demoted are suing and have been suing the department for their lost pay and to be reinstated in their old positions, but now they just got promoted into very high positions.
Well, there is another side of the story to that, as I understand it. The other side of the story is that they didn't do anything wrong, but they were made the fall guy by the old public safety director, Frank Straub, to cover up for his own failures in that case.
They were leadership, and with as many things that were mishandled during that entire case where a cop could have gone to jail for being, doing something ignorant, it's just funny that they seem to have mishandled the blood in the case so many times. I mean, just really, you take a cop to get a blood?
I would watch anything about that under Frank Straub, because you couldn't trust anything that came out of his office under that leadership. These guys say that they were made the fall guys by Frank Straub for stuff that was not their fault. And given Frank Straub's performance, given Frank Straub's lack of honesty and lack of competence in the position as public safety director, I am inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt and look at this reversal of their demotion as maybe correcting an injustice.
I don't think that, as incompetent as Straub was, and I'm with you on that, but I don't think that he made a call to those officers within an hour after that wreck and said, hey, please take that blood, or please go to a non-licensed facility to draw blood.
No, he did.
These were errors that the officers. Well, yeah, but these are errors that the officers
he was busy
made.
Having a conference with IPD leadership because he was getting bad press, and they asked to go to the scene of this accident so they could handle it in the strict manner that it required, and he wouldn't let them. At least that's how I understand the story.
As many mishandlings as there were involved in this case, it's next to impossible for me to believe that there wasn't some form of nefarious attitudes about protecting your own.
Well, and that's
happened. There's no way that all these. I can maybe understand there was a mistake. There's always a mistake here and there, but there were so many quote unquote mistakes that it gets to a point where this is just obviously this isn't incompetence. This is intentional.
Well, no, and then you look at Indianapolis, IMPD specifically being the worst with the whole program of the military equipment and stuff being given to local police forces, the worst at having quote unquote missing equipment, which means it's sitting in somebody's gun cabinet at home or being sold.
Or being stolen out of a sheriff's department paddy wagon that was in someone's driveway.
Yeah.
That happened like 2 nights ago.
Yeah, that just happened. But no, they actually got guns and equipment given to them, and it just mysteriously disappears. Well, and there's no one saying we're not allowed to get equipment now anymore. We're banned from getting that, and so are a couple other departments around the state from getting equipment from the federal government that'll help us out, so we don't have to keep paying for their SWAT gear so they can kick our doors in at 3 a.m. for a joint.
Let me be and I disagree with them for doing it on account of joints, but I have never had a bad experience with IMPD. In fact, when they tried to burglarize my house a couple weeks ago, IMPD came right out within 5 minutes, and they looked into it, and they didn't find anyone there, fortunately.
5-minute response time for the police is a miracle, and it's rare. But it's not even about that. Badges don't grant extra rights or special privileges,
well,
and that's
actually
what you
they
see
do
constantly.
They do grant rights.
Well,
they do now. They're not supposed to.
Yeah, they are supposed to.
Well, they don't. What they don't grant is you the ability to write your own laws. I'm sure we've all been on 465 circling town. I'm not going to lie. I set my cruise control 64, 65 miles an hour. I'm not going the fastest on the road, but I am constantly passed by officers both on duty and off. But whether they're on or off duty, they're in a car. They're in a police car. And as simple as speeding may be, they are assuming, since they're an officer of the law, that they can just get away with it.
No.
They're building in extra rights.
There's another way to look at it, though. If the officer was not speeding, all the other cars on the road would look at him as, he's looking for speeders. So we all better slow down now and then cause a traffic jam and cause another danger on the road. If the officer
then raise the speed limit.
Well,
as an officer of the law in a car, you need to be obeying the law to the letter.
I don't disagree with you on raising the speed limit one bit.
He's passing people that are pulled over.
No, and then okay, you say that's okay. Well, then the cop is now deciding on when to enforce the law and when to not. If someone's speeding, he has to pull them over.
No, he doesn't.
Isn't that his job?
No, he doesn't have to pull them over.
No,
that's discretion.
No, yeah, they had the discretion. So, I decide you can get away with breaking this law today, but, you over there, you can't. So that's an issue in and of itself.
Right.
First off, there shouldn't be all these victimless crimes because Indiana has a prison problem where we lock up way too many people who have never hurt another soul. But, these cops just love it because it's revenue generation.
No, it's not the cops who love it. It's the brass who love it. It's the prosecutors who love it.
Who's enforcing it? The whole just following orders thing doesn't apply to cops either.
Well,
They're out there doing it. And you're saying that individual cops have discretion, right?
Yes.
Well, they're using their discretion to hit people with victimless crimes, are they not?
No, probably they're under orders from above. That's where the whole rumors about speeding ticket quotas comes from. That cops have to get a certain number of tickets, whether it's speeding, whether it's running red lights, in order to generate enough revenue for the city. Typically, the cops on the street and the detectives will have a far different view of law enforcement than the top brass. The top brass love speed limits. The top brass love red light cameras. The top brass love busts for prostitution and drugs. It's the cops on the street who know that it's ridiculous.
But if you're gonna sign a contract to be an officer or whatever, you're going to sign up to be a cop, and you're going to say that I'm going to wear a badge and I'm going to enforce the law, then in front of the public, I don't care if an off-duty officer is in his own car, I don't care what he's doing, but when he represents himself as an officer by being in that police car, then if he is breaking the law, then he's telling you it's okay to break the law. I agree with your statement on that, but that's not his place. As an officer, he is obligated to say the law is the law and you have to follow it, and I have to set the example by only going 55 on 465, even though that seems ridiculously slow.
And forcing everyone around
if the law needs changed.
What you just said him doing is the exact same reason, because it's a deterrent against breaking the law. The same reason why we give all the cops the free cars and the free fuel to take them home and around town shopping, because they say by them being in the presence of the area, it's a deterrent. So them going to speed limit on 465 or any other road is a deterrent against speeding, which means they are doing
the
their
law
job.
is a bad one, and the people have voted by their feet that it is a bad one.
All right.
And the cop holding up, not pulling them over, but holding up traffic on 465 by going the speed limit is actually creating a safety hazard.
No, if the law is a bad one, then you're never going to get it changed by just saying it's okay to break it, because then everyone will just break it. You will get it changed if all of a sudden every officer on 465 only goes 55 and everyone's trapped behind them forever, and people start whining and moaning about it. Then the law will get changed.
No, they're not. They're not. They're not going to change.
Well, okay, here.
But
my point is that all these laws are retarded anyways and need to be done away with, because I don't believe in government. Why cops are getting such a bad rep is when they sit there and they push out their own justice. There's a judge, jury, and executioner sometimes, literally executioner, when they don't properly announce themselves when busting in somebody's house and then shooting them 60, 70 times, or when they're sitting there and they finally chase somebody down and you see these huge overweight cops waddling up there out of their cars after they've hit the guy or whatever, and they just sit there and they beat on them. They take out their little ass and they tase people incessantly. They tase literally retarded children, autistic kids in the movie theater to death because they're too lazy or ignorant, or they're just too hopped up on the love of violence, control, and power that they literally go around and they beat and maim and torture the public. That's why cops are getting a bad rap, and that's why we have Cop Block, to make sure that we're going to be there to catch them doing it if they do. And then another thing we do is we make sure that there's good cops that need evidence, support their claims against other fellow officers. They have it. Another thing is we get to capture all those supposedly good cops just standing there watching the bad cops do the bad things. That's why we're here, and that's what we're doing, and that's why cops have a bad rep, because you've got some bad cops, but you don't have a whole lot of them standing up. Look what they did to Christopher Dorner out in L.A.
Well, we're going to disagree about Christopher Dorner. In fact, a lot of us think Christopher Dorner got what was coming to him.
Well, okay, you know what? That's fine, but he didn't get his day in court.
Well, he could have had his day in court if he had surrendered. He didn't.
No.
That's on him.
He tried to leave the cabin. They forced him back in and then set it on fire.
I haven't seen any indication that he was trying to surrender. Nothing I've read.
No, I didn't say he's going to say his surrender. But that does not give the cops the right to burn someone alive and then magically find their perfectly safe wallet.
He shot at the cops. He killed a couple of them. So he wouldn't surrender. They had every right to use force to bring him in. No, this is on Christopher Dorner.
Define acceptable force. Is burning someone alive acceptable force to bring someone to justice? I'm not saying that that's what happened, but
it is, because
it's definitely a possibility.
What do you want him to do?
You've got recordings.
What do you want them to do? Keep half of Southern California's law enforcement around that cabin for what? 3 weeks?
Yes.
However long. Oh, give me a break.
Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
What about the other people of Southern California who are denied police protection because you want to give
the LAPD's insane?
Because you want to
went on a manhunt and shot up 2 different vehicles and put people in the hospital because it was a blue truck instead of a gray truck, and they completely went militaristic and broke so many rules and laws.
That's the biggest problem with this story.
Terrorized the entire town.
I'm not saying what he did was right because
he
was
killed
not.
4 people. Let's keep that in perspective. He got what was coming.
But he did not get his day in court.
But he didn't deserve it. He was the one who opened fire on
everyone.
Didn't deserve a day in court. He didn't deserve to be brought to justice
because he had the chance to surrender.
This isn't the Wild West here. We don't just hang people in the courthouse square because we believe.
Christopher Dorner treated it as the Wild West. He was the one who shot 2 cops.
That's all right.
So the cops sank to his
Once again,
level.
this is where the cops have to stand up and be better people and say that I live and respect the law, and the right thing to do is to get this guy in court.
There's a reason why cops carry guns. That's because a lot of the people that they have to apprehend.
What about the people that they killed and
people.
shot that didn't even match the description, the right vehicle? They just opened fire randomly
and so
on
that
wrong
means,
people.
They put
that
40
means they should have
bullet
surrendered to Christopher Dorner?
No, no one ever said they had to surrender.
Yeah, no one ever suggested surrender.
Then how the police shot up 2 cars that had no relation to Christopher Dorner? And I agree that was a bad thing.
And they set up unwarranted checkpoints. They checked over 600 homes without a warrant. They kicked down the doors and property damage, everything else, terrorized people looking for this guy. That does not, no matter what he did, that does not excuse their actions to terrorize innocent people.
I'm not talking about Christopher Dorner himself.
Once they got to the cabin.
So your thought process, let me just get this straight. Your thought process is if the police officers are going to be tied up for more than a few hours or a couple days, then they should just shoot the person.
Well, that's not exactly what I said. What I said was Christopher Dorner shot at the officers and killed, I believe, 2 of them when they were surrounding his cabin. Now, under that theory, based on his actions, they were under no responsibility to keep surrounding that place with half of Southern California's law enforcement, whether it's LAPD, whether it's Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, whether it's San Bernardino County Police Department. They had every right to go in there and try to apprehend them. He had the chance to surrender.
He had to try to apprehend him. You're right. There's a difference between opening fire and the chance of protecting yourself and opening fire with the intent to kill.
Simple procedures would say, simple logic would say, you set up a simple 360 because he was across the street from their command post. By the way, you set up a simple 360.
I didn't say they were competent.
They
are the LAPD.
But they're very competent at harming people. But you set up a 360, you wait them out. I don't care.
How long? How long? You want to keep all Southern California's law enforcement. You want to denude all these places. This is where I was
coming up with the point that you said earlier. So there's a time limit where you just say it's fine to kill them. You're going to cross X time, and it's okay to kill. Where's the threshold here?
You are the guys who are saying, wait him out. I am saying that he was keeping half of Southern California's law enforcement on overtime surrounding his cabin.
It doesn't matter.
Entire neighborhoods.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter. No, innocent people were being threatened by criminals because LAPD had to surround this guy in his house.
LAPD were the criminals threatening people, but
Christopher Dorner was the criminal.
Until proven guilty in a court of law, not by a bunch of redneck cops.
He shot at the police. He shot at them.
Okay.
He killed 2 of them. They are under no responsibility to bring him in.
No.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not. In that confrontation.
Their job is to get him into justice. Now, if in the process of getting to him to justice, there is something where they are opening fire to protect themselves and he ends up dead, that's one thing. But that doesn't appear to be the case. The shots that he took at them wasn't at the time he died. The shots that he took at the officers was earlier.
That's no different than someone. That's
no different than a war. Him out.
There's no difference between that and someone being wanted for the murder and shooting of 3 people. Say if somebody calls in and they killed 3 people with a gun and they're still armed, the cops can't just go out and shoot that person because they know he killed somebody. That's hearsay and it hasn't been proven in a court of law.
That is not what happened here.
No, he shot cops, so they're special.
This guy. He shot cops during that incident when they were trying to track him down and when they were surrounding his house. If he had escaped, he would do it again. So either they apprehend him or they kill him. but he could not be allowed
By
to escape
burning
because
them alive.
All right, at that point in time,
he can surrender.
No,
he
at
had
that
the
point in
choice
time,
to surrender.
You know, they're cops. They're not the military.
No,
You're
and-
making military ability assumptions of the police officers. The military in other countries can make the decision to kill or be killed, but in the United States of America, on our citizens, the United States of America, here within the bounds of our country, if you're a police officer, you don't have military authority. That is a military.
If someone
Okay,
shoots
okay.
at you, you are allowed to shoot back. This
Yes.
is not rocket surgery.
Okay, that's a huge case. That's a huge thing. And I think we're going to cut that subject off where it was. But we're going to go ahead and end the show anyways. This was the Uncontrollables, and here tonight with me having lots of fun arguing just horribly pointless things was Josh Featherstone, who was the vice chair of the Libertarian Party of Marion County.
And he still is.
Thank you very much.
And
Yes,
yeah,
I still am.
he's
At least until this recording gets out.
Yeah, at least until this is posted on, yeah.
I do appreciate the opportunity to be here. Hope to be able to come back and sit here in the studio with you again.
Yeah, the nice studio, isn't it? Again,
It's a very nice couch. Very nice.
We're also here with Jeffrey Cox, who's an attorney, author, and historian on a bunch of, war stuff. And
Call me Jeff, or call me JR. People call me far less nice names than that, but I'm used to it by now. Just make sure you spell it right.
Well, I kind of enjoyed having you guys on. I may or may not invite either one of you back or talk to you ever again. But thank you for listening. This was on Indiana Talks. Make sure you check out the website and all the other shows and maybe hit that donate button because none of us are making money, but they need to pay for equipment and hosting and all the other fun stuff that comes with running the network. We don't have big sponsors like the government, so we're not CNN or Fox. So with that, we're going to sign off. I'm Miah Akston, and I'm Uncontrollable.